I knew it wouldn't take me long till I found my way back to the amazing state of Utah. This time for another road trip with the guys. We would all meet up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and then work our way north towards Park City, Utah. I caught a quick glimpse of the Hoover Dam out my window before we touched down at the McCarran International Airport, Las Vegas. Tony and I were able to soak up some of the Las Vegas sunshine and see a couple of the sights before we met Nick and Justin back at the hotel room to figure out what to do for the night. We all decided to start in downtown Las Vegas at the Fremont Street Experience. Fremont Street is a long corridor lined with restaurants, bars, shops, and casinos. There's plenty of attractions to do here, including a zip line that flies right down the middle of the street. The whole thing is also covered by a roof that projects an amazing light display. After this, it was back to the Strip, where we decided we were going to see as many casinos as we could in the night. From Caesars to Mandalay Bay, we decided to walk the entire Strip. Our entire walk outside, I continued to marvel at just how few people were on the streets. It was a bizarre introduction for my first ever visit to Las Vegas.
There's no one here. This is crazy. Vegas night, baby!
Here is the New York Hotel and Casino, where the entire hotel is shaped just like the skyline of New York City. From there, we crossed the road to the Excalibur, which looks like an old medieval castle. Then it was through an underground tunnel to the Luxor, which is a ancient Egypt-themed, pyramid-shaped hotel and casino.
Absolutely not.
We made it all the way to the fountains at the Mandalay Bay, where we turned right around and went back to the hotel room for some much-needed sleep. We were in the car early in the morning, headed due east of Las Vegas. We took Highway 89A past the southern portion of the Vermilion Cliffs National Monument. We went over Marble Canyon, and then we ended the day at Horseshoe Bend before stopping in Page, Arizona for the night. Immediately, you leave the gray cliffs of Nevada behind and enter the vast open red rock landscape of the state of Arizona. After a quick stint through a burned-down section of the Kaibab National Forest, we were treated with this great view of the Vermilion Cliffs National Monument. The road appeared to continue on forever through this vast expanse, but we had to keep on trekking. We continued on past amazing rock face after amazing rock face until we got to our next destination, the historic Navajo Bridge. To go along with the pristine view, this bridge has a really interesting past. It was the opening of this bridge on January 12, 1929, that marked the first direct crossing in this area of the Colorado River for automobiles, cutting down on a more than 750-mile journey for those looking to get to the other side. Before this, there was a ferry that operated from 1873 to 1928 called Lee's Ferry that was located at the mouth of Glen Canyon, just a couple miles up from the river seen here. This was the only way for vehicles to cross until the Navajo Bridge was built. Spanning from rim to rim, a distance of 834 feet. It also sits 461 feet above the river below, making it the highest steel arch bridge in the world at the time of completion, of course. And it's worth mentioning that this and the more modern traffic bridge located directly adjacent are some of the best viewing spots to see North America's largest bird, the ultra-rare, critically endangered California condor. Sadly, this animal was almost wiped off the surface of the planet in the not-so-distant past. In 1987, there were less than 30 individuals left on Earth. However, with the help of government protections and zoo breeding programs And through reintroduction plans, the numbers have been able to climb to just over 500 left today. One of the best and only places in the world to come see this majestic animal is right here from the historic Navajo Bridge. If you're ever in the area, I would highly recommend to come here and see the scenery, indulge yourself in the history of this place, and witness the beauty of one of America's greatest conservation success stories. We took a final glance at what we had just traveled through before hitting our next destination, a sunset at Horseshoe Bend. This has become one of the most popular spots along the Colorado River, and it's not hard to see why when you see how photogenic this space is. It's profile pic after profile pic when you're taking selfies here. So it's no wonder the Forest Service has stuck an entrance kiosk at the gate and now charges a small fee per car if people want to come take the hike and get their pictures taken. To me, it was well worth it because this view and this sunset were unforgettable. Early in the morning, day 3, I took a sunrise hike down to the Glen Canyon Dam overlook. This gorgeous little gem of a spot was located just behind the hotel where we stayed the night in Page, Arizona. It offered an incredible overlooking view of the Glen Canyon Dam, which is holding back the magnificent Lake Powell. After I had enjoyed a sunrise and finished my cup of coffee on the cliff, it was time to head back to the car and continue on. I was brimming with excitement because we were heading towards the beautiful Zion National Park. But our first stop for the day was this cool little overlook looking down on Lake Powell, Arizona. This lake is an absolutely massive man-made reservoir. It's known for its beauty, and it's become one of the best vacationing spots in the whole country, visited by millions of people every year. Here we're just looking down on a small portion of the absolute southern end of this massive lake. Soon we were into Utah, and we'd be driving on one of the most scenic roads in the entire country, Highway 9 into Zion National Park. We were struck with awe as soon as we passed through the east entrance. We were even treated to a wildlife sighting almost immediately as we began to see bighorn sheep out our windows.
There's a goat.
There's one.
Oh, yeah.
I told you.
Where? Right on the side of the road here.
Oh, it's chewing on some grass.
Oh, there's one right there.
Look at that. Sweet.
Bah. There are tons of them.
We continued on down the Mount Carmel Highway, marveling at the amazing geology and the scenery that surrounded us in every direction. Here we are passing through one of the tunnels, carved out in the 1920s. First stop of the day was going to be a quick 1-mile round-trip hike on the Canyon Overlook Trail. This trail offered some promising views for low mileage, but little did we know that 1-mile journey was pretty much all gain in elevation, which wasn't great for those of us traveling that aren't too great with heights. So Nick and I continued towards the top for the views, and Justin and Tony turned around to scout our next destination and look for more wildlife. We continued trekking onward and upward, hugging the canyon wall. Eventually, the handrails disappear along our narrow little path as it continues winding along the sheer rock face.
Wait, what?
We even passed over a weeping wall where the moss was dripping with water, covering the teeniest little step. But we knew everything was going to be well worth it when we finally reached the top. And we were not wrong, because this view, looking west towards the entrance of Zion Canyon, with the towers of the Virgin looming in the background, was absolutely phenomenal. When we were finished soaking it all in, we scurried back down the trail where we met Justin and Tony, who had stumbled across an amazing slot canyon located right at the bottom of the trail. This was a short, little open-ended canyon, but it still satisfied every single desire I had to hike a slot canyon during this trip. It was a quick hike in and out before we were back to the car, heading towards our next destination, which was going to be the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. But first we had to pass through another one of Zion's famous landmarks, the Zion Tunnel.
Yeah. By the way.
That is apparently the sound your body will make as you catch your first glance out of some of these epic windows. Zion offers extremely unique views as it gives visitors the perspective of being at the bottom of the canyon and looking up at its massive red walls. The scenery really pops as you exit this tunnel. Unfortunately for us, on a day as gorgeous as this in late February, the scenic drive was filled with people and there was very limited parking. The entire road ended up being closed, so we just had to drive past. We made it all the way to the southern entrance of the park before turning around and discovering that the scenic road would not be back open until much later in the afternoon. So we decided to drive out the way we came and head just a little bit further north towards Bryce Canyon National Park for our second park of the day. But we first had to soak up every last view we could of the majestic Zion National Park. Just a little over an hour drive down the road is Bryce Canyon National Park, another one of Utah's Big Five. And although it's close, this park varies greatly in everything from its geology to its plant life to its wildlife and especially its weather. But coming here in the winter, even though it can be very cold, offers you the rare glimpse of seeing these towering red hoodoos sticking out of this vast snow-covered landscape. You could honestly spend as much or as little time as you wanted at this park, and even if you had just a half hour of your time to spare, I would still say it's worth coming here just to see the amphitheater section. We started off by parking at Sunset Point and then heading out on the rim trail north towards Sunrise Point. After our time in this section and capturing all our photos, we backtracked back to Sunset Point where we hung out for a minute and checked out some of the hiking trails around in the canyon. For me personally, the Sunset Point was the best area of the park. I really enjoyed just how many hoodoos there were and how close together they all stood. And it was late afternoon at this point, and the light was hitting everything pretty much just right. They do call it Sunset Point for a reason. Here's a view from the top of the trail looking down towards the Wall Street section of the park. This was closed due to snow and ice. This little window arch marked the end of our trail for now. Just like the rest of Bryce Canyon, It offered a fantastic view if you just take the time to peek through. When we had finished soaking it all in, we backtracked back out of the trail and continued on just a little further down the rim trail towards Inspiration Point. And I would have to agree, the southern portion of the Bryce Canyon Amphitheater is truly inspiring. We made the short hike back to the car and decided to drive a little deeper into the park before we actually took off. We made it as far as Farview Point. It's a vastly different view than the amphitheater from which Bryce Canyon gets its fame, but it was still really cool to be at the very top of the Colorado Plateau looking down over the Dixie National Forest and out onto the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. At this point, we were back in the car because we still had a long drive ahead of us all the way to Salt Lake City for the night, because we had yet another big adventure planned for the morning. Bright and early, we were driving through a fresh coat of snow, or pow as they call it in Utah, where we were heading to gear up for some snowmobiling. Our adventure guides had us starting out in the side-by-sides where we'd be driving up into the mountain to our snowmobile staging area.
I wish I had the dark sunglasses though.
We were absolutely brimming with excitement, ready to get to our sleds and see what we could do up there on the mountain. We were having so much fun, we would have been satisfied just whipping these around the golf course. But we knew there was bigger and better things yet to come. Finally, our time had come. Time to get on our chariots and ride. We started off fairly slow with a couple of trips through some meadows and trails winding through the woods, but it was a perfect amount of time for us to gain confidence with our machines. Because once they unleashed us to the mountain, we were ready to shred this fresh pow. And after a short while down the trail, we pulled over just to snap a couple of group pics, and then we made it to the big open area on top of the mountain where we were really able to let loose. Spent pretty much the rest of our morning ripping up and down this hill, really sad. catching some air at one point. We summited the mountain late morning just to take a break as the clouds cleared and allowed us to soak in these epic views.
Yeah, I'm glad it cleared up a little bit. Pretty cool.
And just like that, our morning ride was over and we were back in Salt Lake City looking for a way to spend the rest of our afternoon. So we headed west out of town towards yet another spectacular, stunning, beautiful, unique feature of this area. But first, we made a little roadside stop at the Tree of Utah. This was just a fun little art installation we stopped at before getting to our main destination, the Bonneville Salt Flats. This place is the remains of an ancient lake that when it dried up left behind a hardened, salty surface. It's famous to us today as the place where land speed records are set. And to be quite honest, there's just not much of a point to drive all the way out to the Salt Flats and not stop in and say hi to Wendover Will. And day 5 was ski day, where we had lift passes to Park City Mountain, the largest ski resort in the USA. We arrived early in the morning so that we could get the most out of our full day on the slopes. We are all pretty much beginner to intermediate level skiers, so we stayed mostly on the easy trails. But this being one of the largest ski resorts around, there's a full variety of any kind of skiing you would want to do at this park. Shred and pow, baby!
Nice.
Here we all are heading down the Home Run Trail. This is a run heading down the main face of the slope of the Mountain Village side of the resort. Here's our buddy Tony in the tan jacket, absolutely shredding it out here for his first day ever on skis. After a grueling morning of learning how to ski, Tony's ankles thought it was time for him to take a break. So he split from the group to go join a beverage at the drink stand. Well, the three of us hopped on the Quicksilver gondola.
Wow.
This is a lift that will actually take you up and over a mountain ridge that runs down the middle of the resort, splitting it into two halves, those being the Mountains Village side and the Canyons Village side. The three of us would be enjoying a few more runs on the Canyon side before we would head back down and meet back up with Tony, who had taken just a short shuttle ride from the other side of the resort to this side where he was resting before we would end the day on the slopes. These ended up being some of our favorite runs of the entire trip, as we really enjoyed the speed and the close proximity of the trees lining some of these trails. We descended down the mountain again, where we met back up with Tony, who was enthusiastic about ending the adventure on a high note. We had just enough time for one final trip to the top, so we made our last run where we soaked in our final views and had to say goodbye to this amazing state of Utah once again.